Hey everyone, may the 4th be with you. Today is Star Wars Day, so we're going to be celebrating that with this special sketch and stuff, where we're going to use watercolors to create the Rebel Alliance symbol. You can pick up your craft kit at any of our 3 branches. Today we're going to need watercolor paper, 2 cups, one for your clean water and one for your dirty water, a watercolor paint palette, a paper towel or 2, some painter's tape, which would be blue tape or masking tape, a pencil with an eraser, a Rebel Alliance stencil, and an Arabesh character sheet. The watercolor paper, palette, stencil, and character sheet are all in your craft kit. There are also some alternative stencils in the description of this video. Now let's get going. First off, this is the image we're going to be creating today. It shouldn't be difficult, and we're going to be breaking it down into some easy to follow steps. First, we're going to make a stencil by cutting out our symbol. As you can see, I've already cut mine. Here are the Arabesh symbols, which are the written language of Alderaan. I wrote the word hope, but you can write whatever you want. This is a practice sheet I did. I included practice paper for you guys too. I like how this one came out, so I'm keeping it here as a reference for myself. I also printed some pictures of space for inspiration. You can do this too if you want ideas for colors to use. I'll also link the picture I just showed in the description. First off, if you can use some painter's tape to tape the page down to your table, that will make it so that the page doesn't wrinkle or buckle from the water. Tape it down, that way once you're done painting, the paper will dry and not shrink up, keeping its flat form. This tape is ideal because unlike most tape, it generally doesn't rip paper. Be careful when you're pulling it off though, as it might rip some of the paper if you're not gentle. Go ahead and cut out your symbol. I already cut mine off screen. I'm putting a tiny bit of tape down in the middle to keep it in place, and I'm going to hold the paper down with my hand, while I very lightly trace the stencil with my pencil. Make sure to draw very lightly, as this outline is only going to serve as a guide for filling it in with paint, and ideally we want the pencil to gradually fade out of visibility as we add the paint on top of it. We're also going to erase it, leaving it just visible enough so that we can still make it out and use it as a guide. You guys can't really see it, but it was visible enough to me. So here's the old painting. I'm going to deviate from this design a little bit, but we'll still have it by me as a reference in case I want to copy anything that I did before. I'll also keep the galaxy images near me so I can see what galaxies really look like and keep them as an aesthetic inspiration. I'm going to start it in the middle, adding a very pale yellow streak across in a diagonal direction. I am mostly going to keep my paint flowing in a diagonal and fluid motion so that it looks nice and organic. I'm diluting it with a good amount of water to keep it very light. I want the center to be the lightest part of the painting so that it will appear to be glowing, so I'm not going to touch that area much. I'm adding more color as I go out to the edges, creating a very light pastel gradient from orange to red, and I'm blending it with clean water as I go. Using more water will give you lighter colors and a more flowy effect. Using less water will give you more control and deeper pigments, so it's up to you to practice and find a good balance. Now I'm laying down some water and adding little pops of purple into the corners. I'll also note that I'm keeping the edges pretty crisp. So that was our first layer. This is called the underpainting. Let's let this dry for a few minutes. We're going to add 2 more layers after this. In this next layer, I'm going to go in with a fair amount of water and some vibrant pigment and fill in some nice clouds of color. I'm going to start with the light colors towards the center and work my way out with the darker ones. This can be flexible, however, so you may want to put small amounts of lighter colors near the dark colors and vice versa, to create interest and contrast. I'm starting with some nice orange, letting my brush flow without trying too much to control it. also adding some red, leaving some parts dark and using clean water in other parts to blend out the red and lighten it a bit. I am periodically looking at my references to see what I want to copy. Now I'm going in with some purple. I'm focusing the purple out toward the edges of the symbol, as the darker color that comes through are going to represent the night sky behind our nebula. Don't try to get all of your colors super dark or intense just yet, as we're going to be adding on another layer and can darken everything up then. I'm adding some darks next to the lights to increase the contrast, blending some of the edges as well. I'm also occasionally checking my previous painting and my practice painting to see if there's anything I want to mimic. I'm adding some extra orange to brighten up some spots and create more light. Now I'm going to let this layer dry. Okay, so we're back with the last layer of the symbol. Now I'm going to intensify some of those colors by packing them on. I'm starting with blossoms of red, and I want to cover some of this white space as well. My first painting was vibrant, but I want this one to be darker because I want it to look more like a galaxy and less like a cloudy sky. I'm adding more purple and darkening that, and also adding it in more places towards the center. I'm layering more purple over the purple that I already laid down to darken it, and I'm also bringing more purple towards the center. I'm going to bring those dark spots in from the corners more. Now I want to add some blue to provide coolness in this warm piece. I'm adding it on top of some purple to darken that, and adding it in places where it will stand out by itself. Lastly, I'll be adding black to really up the contrast and the feeling of the night sky. I'm adding it in the corners and really darkening the picture. I'm also adding it next to the light colors and in some streaks in the painting to make the picture more intense looking. Even though I added black over those light colors, I left some spaces where the underneath is poking through, which is adding dimension and some beautiful color complexity into these dark areas. If you happen to have some white acrylic paint, you can paint on some stars once this is dry, or use a flicking toothbrush technique to splatter stars across the image. There are a ton of videos that show you how to do this, and it looks super cool. I'll go ahead and link one in the description if you want to check it out. Now we're going to let this dry and then remove the tape because it's time to make the dripping effect. I'm going to start in the middle, making a small pool of colored water. I chose black. Then painting downward where I want the paint to drip. Now I'm picking the paper up and taping it so that the water drips down. For this part, I recommend using a paper towel beneath to avoid any staining, although this watercolor is supposed to be washable. I'm going to repeat this step with a few different points and colors. You can do more than one color per line if you dab some of the second color on top of the little pool of water. That way it'll drip down into the first color. Once you're done, let that dry and you can move on to writing letters. Once again, take your pencil and very lightly mark out the letters that you want to make. I started with the first and last letters of my name, then put the others in the middle to keep the proportion correct. Carefully erase most of the markings, leaving just enough so that you can use them as a guide. Now you can take the lightest color that you want to work with. I want to use yellow, so I'm going to write all of the letters in yellow. Next, I'm going to put some orange on top, going toward the outer edges. Then some red. Then purple. I'm putting some blue over the yellow too, which makes it a little green, but I like that effect. Lastly, I'm using black on the outer edges, and on the middle line to darken it up a bit. Now your painting is all done. You can add some splashes of color on the page or some little orbs like I did at the top if you want to. You can also try the other stencils in the description if you want. If you guys like working with watercolor, I highly recommend getting a good starter palette, which will run you about $5 at your local art store. I also recommend buying a watercolor sketchbook, which you can find pretty cheap as well. A brand that is good and affordable is the Canson XL series, and that should run you about $5 to $10 depending on which size you want to buy. Just make sure to get the one that says watercolor paper. You can also get a cheap pack of brushes for about $5, and then you'll have everything you need to pick up watercolor painting as a hobby for right around $15. Thanks for watching today, everyone, and if you make your own Rebel Alliance symbol, please share it in the comments below because we would love to see them. May the 4th be with you, and have a great day.